Hey, Emily, I just got back to Ottawa from Japan this week, and I am pretty excited to be back. Spent this whole week super jet lagged, but really recovering from a week with a lot of friends in skiing in Niseko. I know that you're in Taiwan. I'm not even sure if you were in Taiwan the last time we recorded, but I know that you're also living with a group of Asian Wonder Women. How's that going?
Yeah, hey Ivy. It's been pretty interesting actually. So for context, this Airbnb, like we met, like everyone, there's three of us. We met online. So I'm basically living with strangers I've never met, and we're doing an Airbnb. And I think the great thing is we all have our own rooms so that, we have our own space and whatnot. But it's been a lot of like trying to understand like how each other's schedules are and like if we want to hang out together. But for I think it's worked out pretty well, but it could have gone pretty bad too. So
I
I
just
guess,
saw like a reel of Annie and you, and that we just posted on Asian Wonder Woman on Instagram, where
yeah.
you guys were like, "Oh, like online friends to offline friends," kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. I think back then I would think that making online friends is like strange or like kind of dangerous, but now like all of my friends are from online and I meet them in real life while traveling. Is that how it is for you too?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think it's like partially split between people that I knew before who catch up with me on my travels who happen to be
Mhm.
traveling in the same place, or
Mhm.
yeah, mostly people that I meet online. Because it's so easy to find people that you share interests with now online. And it just reminds me that like when the internet first started or when we were like in elementary school,
Yeah.
the biggest warning was, hey, don't meet people from the internet and don't get into a car with strangers. And
Yeah.
now it's like literally summon a stranger from the internet to get into their car. I just
Yeah.
like laugh so hard at that. And that was already like a decade ago, right? Like Uber came
Yeah.
out a decade ago. And now it's like purposely meet people on the internet in order to live with them or like
I
hang out with
know.
them, which is exactly what you're doing.
I know. This concept is pretty interesting. So like the whole idea now is like there are online communities like everywhere. Like you can join any interest group, any hobby group. And so before, like when we didn't have this technology, like you were only able to make friends within people in your proximity, like in the same city or like a friend of a friend, whatever. Like there weren't any dating apps or social apps. But now it's like making friends is borderless. Like I could make friends with someone who is in like Cape Cod right now and we
Yeah.
could be like best friends like chatting on the internet. So it's been interesting. I think my social circle has expanded quite large, but there also comes with like a sense of like exhaustion because there's so many people to connect with, which I think we should talk about too.
Yeah. It's this is like a really weird topic because
Yeah.
I feel kind of lonely sometimes. Like sometimes I feel
Mm.
like, hey, I'm traveling and I'm not connected to anyone. And
Oh,
sometimes I
yeah.
feel like, oh my gosh, there's so many people to meet. There's so many interesting people I can be friends with. And I
Yeah.
feel like the desire to grow deep with them, as well as like there's friends that serve different purposes,
Yeah.
especially when we move around so much and you're hopping between three different places and you have
Yeah.
communities in Taiwan, Singapore, and San Francisco now. Well, I haven't really found that rhythm yet. I'm not
Yeah.
hopping between places, although I think I might move to that. But
Mm.
I'm switching places every 1 to 2 months and I have friends everywhere, but I
Yeah.
feel like really not as close or like I don't really have a community. And that's been really,
Mm.
really difficult. And so today we thought that we would talk more about how do we find community when we're traveling around the world, what really connects people together, and how do you build meaningful relationships, and also why we started Asian Wonder Woman, what we're trying to do here with that community. So why don't you get started? You have three bases. How do you build these communities in these places?
Yeah. So I think the way to not do it is to like burn yourself out, which is like do like I don't know. I think when I first got to Singapore, I probably did over like 50 different coffee chats with people who were like reaching out to me like on from YouTube or just had like mutual interests and whatnot. And I was like, this is great. Like I'm meeting so many people, but I really burnt out and to a point where I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone or see anyone. I just got really like introverted and like had to rest. But
I mean, it doesn't seem like that. You're like a little mini celebrity in Singapore.
no, but I think it really burnt
People
me
buy
out.
you coffee. Didn't you say some guy gave you like $300 on your YouTube channel about like living in Singapore?
Yeah, that's different, right? That's like for content creation. But I think a lot of people are just like interested in like becoming friends. And I hate to say this, but sometimes I feel like now that I'm older and my time is more valuable and like I need to work on projects too, I can't just have fun all the time. I do need to filter people sometimes, right? Like you have people that I want to partner with or like collab with. I have people that like I just click really well. So I think in general, like when you're making a community, it's you try and find people who you like in general, like, you just get along with well and focus on those relationships and dig deeper. And I think it's usually like the cadence, like how often you meet, right? Like you should be seeing this person consistently if you want to have a good friendship or relationship with them. Going in depth, being vulnerable and like talking about like your personal experiences, not just like partying and like drinking all the time. Like you don't build, I guess, like a deeper relationship that way, though some may say otherwise. And then I think third is just like support, right? Like friends support each other. And like you and I, like we talk all the time. And I think that's also like we haven't seen each other in person for 3 years and we're still like really good friends, right? Is it 3 years?
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
No. I saw you end of 2019, in SF.
Yeah.
Before you left for Singapore. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I really like, what you said there about what makes an actual friendship or what makes an actual connection, if you want to. And I already thought of it this way because when I think of inviting people to my birthday party or like inviting people over, I think of like who I'm inviting and why. And it seems to be like the frequency that I connect with this person, the recency that I had like a meaningful connection with them. And then also just like the how long I've known them for, which means like you kind of rack up this emotional bank with them where you just had more chances to develop a really good relationship. And between me and you, I think it's like all three. So that's really awesome. But I want to go back to something that you said about meeting people in Singapore, because not everyone has the opportunity to meet with like 50 people in a month or whatever duration that you're able to do that. And I think you were able to do that because you were posting content online and you were posting about your interests and what you actually wanted to connect with people on, which is this whole new way, I think, of networking. And I've had tremendous opportunity from publishing my own content online. So I always like to brag about this where, I feel like when I write, things just really happen. Like in 2020, no, not 2020 something, 2016, a few months after I graduated, I got laid off. And so I started writing about how to job hunt. And then that led into this like career coaching business where I made $15K a month because of this Medium article I published when I was 22 that made, the top of Google search engine. And then I wrote another article about the unicorns that no one knew about in China, because on Wikipedia, there's like 10 links to the 200 something tech unicorns. And that went viral on LinkedIn. And that's how I met people all around the world because they were China watchers and were really interested from a Western perspective to learn about China. And then I met my now husband because I wrote an article online. And then I sold my company because I wrote an article online. And there's actually just so much opportunity to meet people just by calling them to you. So what about you? Like, I actually want to know, like, what were some of the top pieces that like drew those people to you? How did you meet those? How did you become a mini celebrity in Singapore?
It's weird to say mini celebrity because I don't think of myself like that at all. It's like just like content creator. But I think going back to like what you were saying, right? So basically creating content, like any form or type of content you put out there, I think it's like you're putting out like it's like honey to bees, right? Like you will, social media is just such a great way to meet people. And so I think when I was starting my YouTube channel in 2020, I talked about my life in Singapore, like the struggles I went through as a new expat, and also just like the dating scene, which was surprisingly super popular. So like dating in Singapore is like one of my most popular videos. That's actually how I met Emily and Jane, who are like two of my
Why
best
didn't you
friends.
meet your boyfriend through that?
I don't know,
Instead, you met a bunch of single girls, right?
I know. I was like, I mean, the community that came
Others
from it was
struggling
awesome.
from the
Yeah. I
same
mean,
problem.
yeah, I'm like, this is not just an Emily problem. This is like a global problem. Yeah, basically that dating video led me to meet a lot of like also similar minded women like myself who are like building things, who are also like new to the country and also like, wow, the dating scene here is shit. So that was one piece. And then there was one video where I was just talking about my life, like being like Taiwanese American, and my mother or my friend's mother saw it, and she's Taiwanese, lives in Singapore, and she told her daughter to reach out to me to have dinner at their house. So I went to their house to have dinner. She made me like a Taiwanese meal, and then we just talked about like living here, and it was nice. Like it was just like a home cooked meal, and it was so fun. And I like would not have had that opportunity to like meet someone like her. And so yeah, there's been a lot of interesting stories here and there just because I create content. And so I'm glad I put myself out there, though it's scary, and you just got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. One other way that I've been meeting people, and I wrote this in my my husband and my newsletter, which is just taking online classes and courses, programs, etc. Because again, it draws people of similar interest. And for me, I take a lot of personal development programs, business programs. I hire coaches, etc. And a huge part of it is for that community and people to collaborate with. So that's something that I do as well. But what I've been struggling with, and would love to hear your opinion, is I can't keep in touch with people if I'm not in the same place. Like you and I keep in touch because we work on something together, and there's a common interest here that I guess joins us, but mostly just like working on Asian Wonder Women and like being part of this community versus some friends, even some of my best friends, some of my bridesmen, best friends who don't live in the same city as me, and I might see them once a year. I find it really, really hard actually to catch up, or I hate Zoom calls. I think I already do too many of them. How do you stay close with people that don't live in the same city as you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's also based on like your relationship with that person. So like I have like you mentioned, like you have a preference, right? Like you don't like Zoom calls. So maybe the cadence or the channel of which you communicate is done differently. Like I will use one of my best friends, Anna, for example. She's an introvert, highly like one of the worst, like, I'm not worst, one of the like most introverted people I know. Like she does not like calls, she does not like texting, etc. So, but I'm like, I want to catch up, right? I was like, this for me, like I need to consistently talk to someone if we're going to continue having a friendship and like deepen it. So we agreed on like having a call like once a month. And we both came to those terms together because she knows it's meaningful for me to like catch up and talk about things. And I know it's meaningful for her to have her space and to like decompress because, you know, with work and stuff like that. So I think if you really care about someone, you will make the effort to at least meet the other person halfway. And you'll have to define that with your best friends. And that could be shown in different ways too. It's like you meet them once a year on a big group trip, right? Or yeah, it's hard. You just have to you have to define it with that person.
That's the thing. Like, I think trips with people and creating new memories is so much more meaningful. It's not Zoom. I don't like calls. I don't like catch up calls. And I don't even think my friends really like it either because you're forever catching up with this person, right? Like, I think when you don't live in the same place, when all you do is catch up once a month, once every quarter or something like that, you get the highlight reel of their lives instead of the day-by-day details of how they came to their decisions, right? Like you're not there when someone gets pregnant and how they reacted the first time when they did. And I sometimes do get calls when my friends get engaged or, you know, when they switch a job, when they're thinking about, should I switch this job? Should I quit? Should I, you know, how do I talk to my manager? Like maybe those big decisions you'll get an update on later. But in the moment, like because you're not around and you're not seeing them consistently, I feel like I don't get that. I used to have lunch with one of my best friends every single week. And I love that because weekly highlights are slightly different because the decision-making timeline is just there versus a monthly or quarterly kind of update. And I think it's the weekly or even daily or like these more frequent touch points on the more mundane little things that really make people close.
Yeah. I guess to that point, it would make sense if they had like a newsletter, right? Or like something that showed those.
I have a newsletter.
Yeah. But I guess it's still like people will read your newsletter and they will feel like they're close to you, but there is still no interaction, right? Because they're just consuming the content. They're not actually engaging with you. I think for me, like when I think of talking to Anna like once a month, right? It's like I get to know that, oh, this is happening in her life right now. Or like, oh, she's thinking of moving, blah, blah, blah. Like I still feel like I'm part of her decision making when she's talking about these things. Whereas like if she didn't tell me anything and then at the end of the year she was like, oh, by the way, like I'm leaving San Francisco, I would be like kind of hurt to not know that like earlier. So I guess it's just each person's preference. But like for you, you know, now that you're like going through this, like what do you want from your friends? Like what do you think is like a good cadence or like depth of friendship that you want? Like, have you thought about that yet? Yeah.
I know that that's a question that I should be thinking about because one of the courses I'm taking is called Relating Between the Lines. And it's a, like how to have deeper conversations and better conversations with people. And part of it is understanding your own boundaries and your own needs. And something that I realized through the program as I like share what my goals are, I'm like, I want to be close to my friends. I want to feel like I'm someone that they go to when they have something exciting or something sad. But then the question comes back of like, do you go to them? And I'm like, no, because, you know, the first people that come up are just my husband and then people that I interact with, like sometimes you, because we talk every week. There's people that I'm already on that cadence with and I no longer need to tell 10 people my problems before I figure it out versus like me when I was 20 or 21 or something. I remember like, oh yeah, boy problems. I would tell like literally every girlfriend. They would have their input on whether I like, what text do I send this boy? I will consult like 20 girlfriends, you know, like everyone that I knew. But that's no longer the case. And therefore, I agree that needs to go both ways. And I guess all I can say is I'm working on it, even though I don't do it, which is I think I need to be the one that steps forward and be vulnerable to my friends too and like share my life with them and not think of them actually like against what you said. I do believe that people feel closer to me because Owen and I share in our monthly newsletter like big updates and like things that we are really thinking about rather than just travel. And I feel close whenever I see people's Instagram stories, etc. But because of that lack of interaction, I don't think it's really real connection because not both people, it's not felt on both sides, right? Like I don't feel close to my friends because they read my newsletter unless they respond to it. But at least I'm like giving that opening into my life where people have the opportunity to respond. And I really love it when people respond. I love it when people respond to my content of any kind because it just opens the door to connection. Yeah.
What makes you feel closer to a person? Is it like, for me, it's like, I mean, there's like different things, right? Like it's like you go through trauma together. That's why like sororities and fraternities are so popular in college.
Yeah, but I don't want to go through more trauma in my life. Like I don't need, actually, I
you know?
Yes, because RBTL, Relating Between Lines, talks about this too, right? It's like people seem to, it's not, okay, so you can go through something together. It doesn't have to be trauma. It can be something really happy too, right? Okay, like you go through something together. Or somehow you're able to be vulnerable with them with something that like you experience pain. But the thing is like, I really don't think there's that much pain in my life. And I don't like needing to come up with pain in order to bond with someone. And I don't particularly enjoy, like I have tons of friends I want to reconnect with. I'd rather not all of them come to me every day about their pain.
Okay.
Right? Well, I don't want them to go through pain either.
That was just one of them. So, right. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. If one person is allowed one painful experience per like quarter, you know, but like, I would actually hope that like you don't need that. Right? I'm like a very optimist kind of person. I think you are too. Like we do have our struggles and we complain and stuff, but in the end, I forget bad stuff that happens, and I don't want to have to think about like. And I actually have because I thought that was the way to connect with people. I would sit there and I'd be like, what
You think
bad
about
thing
pain?
do I have to share about my life to complain about so that I seem like, something they can connect with? But I learned from RBTL that like you can also connect with like fun, like by
Yes.
having fun together, play. And that's really hard online. And that really takes like a trip. So you asked me like what do I want from my friends? Like I want to go on more, I want to have more experiences with them. And because we're such big travelers, I think it's really hard actually to find experiences that we haven't done or like isn't on our bucket list anymore. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually really difficult of like what can you do with friends that's different. Like my friend and I actually make TikTok dance videos, and I
Mhm.
thought that was actually really really fun and bonding.
Yeah.
We play board games. Just doing something rather than catching up over a meal I think makes like a huge difference.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, yeah, shared activities definitely help you get closer. I, hmm.
Like don't you feel closer after the Taiwan the Diofin trip with Francesca and Annie?
Yeah, that was fun. And I think that was also like, like content creators, sometimes you like gatekeep, like, people gatekeep like, oh, how they're monetizing and like how they're making content and stuff like that. So, but then it was like Francesca invited us on this trip. She like brought us into this like tourism trip that we went to Jilfin together. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is how like friendships should be like, right?
Yeah, where it was free because you were gonna create. It's like a content creator
Yeah.
trip,
Yeah.
and people share. Yeah, like you need to
Yeah.
share your life and you just share your experiences and you need to feel like not just gatekeeping, like no scarcity mindset and like something that my best friend and I talk about a lot is like
Mhm.
how do we see us as a entity together
Oh,
versus the world versus like a me you kind of thing.
yeah.
And what that actually means is like let's spend a certain amount of like actually dedicate a certain amount of money each year to like go on
Mhm.
a bonding trip together and
Oh,
how do we benefit us as like
yeah.
a me and you kind of thing. And I
Yeah.
think it's worth having these conversations and something that I want to do more often. And I've actually confronted a lot of my friends recently
Mm.
where like not recently as in over the last 6 months because I know like the first step is actually being more aware, right, of like what you need and like what makes you happy, what makes you feel connected with them. And so, like as an example, when I was in New York, like friend that like you also know, like we were going to the museum together and like I invited
Yeah.
him to a lot of different things and he's always like, "Oh, can I bring the girl that I'm seeing?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. I'm not going to reject that." But then every time he brings the girl that he's seeing,
Yeah.
I I'm pretty sure they're dating officially now. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like he always like is way more attentive to her when like I'm
Mhm.
not in town for that long or like in the same city as him and I only see him like 3 times a year at
Yeah.
max, sometimes once a year. And so when I brought that up, that was actually a big connecting moment because I'm sharing something that's actually very difficult to share
Yeah.
because it's always hard to confront someone. And saying that, this is really hard to share. And I'm saying this because I really want to feel connected with you and I really want to spend quality time with you. I think that's also really connecting. And then you see that there's actually a lot of problems with a lot of your friendships.
Yeah.
Not like problems, but improvement opportunities. And by confronting those are actually connecting points too. And that actually makes me feel more connected when we both recognize that we want this and that this is a problem to be close, especially when we
Mhm.
don't live in the same place. What do we do to overcome this together? And it becomes more of a joint venture than
Yeah.
you one sidedly trying to accommodate, just like you and Anna agreed on monthly calls. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely like the intentionality behind it, right? And like how reciprocating you are of like that feedback because like I personally feel this too, like just going back to like, the story of like your friend like bringing their significant other, like we are getting older, right? So like the time
Yeah.
spent with friends is getting shorter because the priorities are just like piling up. Yeah, it's hard. It's like, we're literally entering what I like to call like the sandwich generation where our parents are getting older, like financial burdens are starting to pick up. We are thinking about like children and like having our own families, and so everyone now is like creating their own storyline and the next generation. So I love that you mentioned like, hey, like by the way, like it would be nice to spend one-on-one time more because sometimes we just have our own blind spots too, like that
Yeah.
person was probably like, oh, it doesn't matter because like we're all going to be hanging out together anyways in the same place. But you're like, no, I want to have a one-on-one conversation. So I think that was good communication,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
He really appreciated it too. He was like, oh, I didn't know that was
Yeah.
how you felt, right? And
Yeah.
it's usually like you have two options, right? It's like this always happens, and you're like, I hate you, like I'm not gonna invite you to anything anymore. We're no longer friends, right? Like, but like not even tell them that,
Yeah.
and you just like stop trying to ask them to hang out. But most of the times, like everyone's willing to like,
Yeah. If
like no one can read your mind.
Yes,
is
exactly.
what I'm saying. Like so, and
Yeah.
it's definitely so connecting. Yeah.
I find it fascinating because I feel like from the outside, I feel like you didn't like this wasn't like a big thing. Like I felt like you had really deep like friendships. Like this wasn't like I feel like your pain points in life would have been more around like your business, right? Or like wearing an entrepreneur
No,
hat.
I have
But
so many pain points. I need
it
friends.
surprises me. No, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think you and I can talk so much
Really?
more about this because, like, for me, I think I'm the opposite of you actually in this situation where, like, I think like I have like friendship is great, but for me, it's more of like business operationally. Like that, those are my pain points. So I feel like you and I are living like
Really?
very like parallel
No.
lives.
I also have my business pain points,
Oh,
but I would say that like
yeah.
more unhappiness, I think, is caused
Okay.
with lack of connection, right? Like
Yeah.
you know
I
that
feel you.
I was watching. Oh man, I'm gonna kind of butcher this, but
It's okay.
I actually just wrote a newsletter for my company, Prequel, and it's about how to help kids have more success in their life and fast track them into understanding their potential and discover their passions, etc. And I can find the exact quote later, maybe, but it's around how the biggest factor to whether someone is successful and happy in life and healthy, I think it's to do with health. It's like the healthiest people actually have very deep relationships. Like being able to have deep relationships and feel like you're part of a tribe and community expands your lifespan, extends your lifespan, and your measurement of happiness and health go up. So I've learned that there's like 7 different factors of health. It's like how much you move, what you eat, the sleep, how much you connect with nature, etc. And one of them is whether you have deep relationships. And the recommendations for adults, because in general, it's already hard for adults to create deeper friendships, let alone if you're moving around everywhere in the world. But the suggestion is like join clubs. And if we can't join physical clubs, actually one of my biggest downsides is like, hey, like when I travel is I can't join a consistent sports team. I used to play volleyball, intramural volleyball in San Francisco, and I had a lot of friends who did that, and I really loved it, but I can't do that anymore. That's a trade-off. But joining clubs now, we have Asian Wonder Woman, and like people are meeting up in different cities. So make sure you check out our Facebook group for that. We just today, I think there were like 2 meetups. There was one in Japan and one in like Bali. So join clubs and then also like find time with the friends that you've had before. And I think we talked about both of these aspects. But to address your surprise, I would say that like most recently, even in like when I was in Japan, I'm like to Owen, I'm like, what purpose do friends serve? Because I just felt so disconnected at some points where I'm like, they haven't been in my I don't feel like they're in my life, but then I always feel so great when I do see a lot of friends. But again, like seeing them once or twice a year and losing touch in between, they're just people that you have fun with and people you can feel like yourself with. And I do have friends that tell me, I just need someone who understands me. I don't care how often I see them. Like even if we live in the same city, we probably wouldn't see each other more than once a month because like they're super introverted. But so friendships all mean different things for different people, and I'm still trying to figure out what works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. Going back to like what you said about because you are moving around a lot, like that is kind of why I am thinking of rooting down in San Francisco for a year, right? Like when
you're
April
gonna be rooted there for a year?
I think so, but for multiple reasons. One, because my nephew is growing up and I want to be there. Like I think that's important to me. I'm like above everything
auntie
else.
Mode.
Yeah, auntie mode, like family. Like I think family is really important to me in this. Like I don't know. I just like realized like the past 3 years I've spent so much time with people that I shouldn't have, to be honest. Like, I
Mm.
should have spent more time with like family. So I think for me, like family is a huge reason why I'm moving back to SF. Two, dating, obviously, because I'm like, I need to be more intentional about that. Like before I remember I used to like shy away from it and be like, oh, like, I want to say it out loud. But like, I actually don't want to be alone. Like I'm like, I have such a great life.
That's a very normal thing to not want.
But I'm just saying, like, for those who are like thinking of like being nomadic and dating, it is hard. I will say that, and that can be a whole other episode within itself. And then I think third, similar to you, I'm like, I am tired of rebuilding things in a new place, like constantly. So I'm just gonna rest and like reconnect with like my friends back in the Bay Area, and like you're gonna be there too. So like you and I we will like have quality time. We'll do podcasts in person, and I think we talk about this a lot more because I think this is such a great topic, and it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Like people are, people. Yeah.
I mean, this is like, first of all, a universal problem of like how to have meaningful relationships. Like there's real experts and TED Talks in this space that I have crawled in order to write my newsletter, you know? But I think we'll wrap it up here. I think like we provide one of the best places for women to find community wherever they are, because we know that it can get lonely, and we're constantly thinking about the trade-offs, right? Of business, of traveling, of being nomadic, and then also maintaining relationships. And it's just definitely something that I feel like we lose more out on in that aspect of life because we're optimizing for something else, and maybe eventually that'll change in our lives. But I do think very deep friendships can form online, and especially around certain interests. And so that's where I found it. It's translated to offline, but where I'm lacking is like those deep connections with some of my friends from before. But thanks everyone for listening, and hope to see you guys in our community and on our newsletter, where we share. Actually, this is not a great place to talk about that newsletter because no. Hopefully we see you in our community and on our newsletter, where we broadcast the meetups in different places, so you can meet friends in different places, in new locations that you're traveling to.
Yes. Sounds good.
All right, see you soon.
I'm the baddest chick. I'm not a thick. I'm about my business. Show a money clip.